Let's check if everything is working. I will give 1 second here.
Yes.
Oh, yes, so we are online now. So let's begin. I want to say hello to everyone who
Hello.
is connected. And hello, Pascal. Very happy to have you here again with us. And good afternoon in Europe, and still good morning in the Americas. Welcome to a new live episode of Conexión Natural, and this time in English. For the ones who don't know us, we are Esfera Viva. I'm Juliana. I'm one of the hosts of this podcast, and the idea is to have a space here to share knowledge, stories, and reflections that help us connect with the planet we call home. So if you want to follow us and stay tuned, please do so. You can find us in Instagram and YouTube as Esfera Viva, and we are also in the different podcast platforms as Conexión Natural by Esfera Viva. And in the comments, you're very welcome to write us where do you come from. Leave your comments, your questions in the chat. We may have some time at the end to read some of the questions and to have some chat with Pascal. So I will jump directly to the introduction. Pascal, we are delighted to welcome you as our guest, and not only as a trail runner, but also as a glaciologist. So Pascal is an associate professor at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology in Trondheim, and a known Swiss mountain athlete. He has an extensive experience in the study of subglacial hydrology, geophysical methods, remote sensing, and the rapid retreat of glaciers. So in addition to his academic work, Pascal is well known in the mountain running community, having competed at an international level in sky running and trail running events. So Pascal, this combination of scientific expertise and also your athletic experience gives you definitely a different perspective on the challenge of the glaciers in this warming world. And this is the reason why we decided to invite you here again to have you and share your knowledge with us. So thanks again for accepting our invitation.
Thanks, Juliana, for the invite.
So, Pascal, you were last year running in the Snowman race, and this is the topic of this podcast, which is this ultramarathon held in Bhutan. And the idea of this ultra trail marathon is to raise the global awareness about the impacts of the climate change. So, as I understood, the race was designed and conceived by the king of Bhutan, who invited you. And I mean, the course is very challenging, around 200 kilometers over several days. Also with some other elite trail runners. But please tell us, how was that race? When was it? How did you get invited to that? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it was last October 2024, and the race actually only takes place every 2 years because it's such a big effort to organize it. It was the second edition. And so, yeah, it was, you can see here the picture of the race course. It was across the Snowman track, a route across the highlands of Bhutan, in the north of Bhutan, several passes above 5,000 meters above sea level, and really linking A to B. And so it's stages, it's 5 days, 5 stages. And we always slept in camps, in tents in between. So yeah, the idea was, I think, as far as they explained to us, the people from Bhutan, that they invite some international runners, but they also select their own national athletes, the best Bhutanese athletes, and they can compete against us. since it's a big logistics and also kind of a high risk, actually, they only invited a very limited number. So they really looked for kind of international athletes with some connection to the environment, to like willing to be taking care of the planet, but also interested in a special challenge. And it seems like it was not so easy to find suitable runners for them, but they did. And yeah, it was a huge commitment because it's like it's hard to imagine, but it was so much to organize. Actually, the whole like a big part of the military helped with like installing camps, ensuring safety, logistics, and so on. And yeah, so it is not only these 5 days of racing, but we already arrived more than a week before to acclimatize and to learn about the country's tradition and culture, and also about the mountain environment that is changing quickly in this changing climate. And then afterwards, we also had some ceremony after the race. So yeah, we were I think 9 international runners from Africa, USA, Europe, Japan, Bangladesh, and then 7 runners from Bhutan, half and half more or less, women and men.
Nice. Pascal, was it supported? I mean, did you have to carry your food or supply that? Or you were having, I mean, all the food in each of the camps, but during the trail, the whole day, was it supported? How you can take us a little bit through the race in each of the days?
Yes, maybe I can start with this picture because that's where we had the pleasure to attend the Royal Highland Festival, a very important event every year that was held in Laya, at about 3,800 meters above sea level in this village, a farmer village in Bhutan. And that's our group of runners, but also officials and military. And in the middle of this picture, you can actually also see, yeah, the Prime Minister and the King of Bhutan. And we were really lucky to meet them and to talk to them, and about their mission and their idea of this race. So that's the group. And then you ask, yeah, if the race was supported. So that's why I actually opened these pictures. So here you see us at the gear check. Material was a huge thing. So, I mean, it was supported in a way that we got food at the camps and tents. I mean, it was a big logistics. They had to ride in with horses for several days to build up the camps. But we had to carry a lot of our own gear. We had to carry everything needed for like warm clothes, food for the day, sleeping bag for the night, and a little InReach satellite communication device for emergencies, and so on. So our backpack, that's the content of my backpack. That was like the mandatory gear. It was about, at least I would say, around 5 kilos. So kind of heavy for running, actually, but also really important because you go over passes up to 5,500 meters above sea level, and if you catch bad weather there, or you get lost additionally, or you get injured, it can quickly become very serious. So that's the packed bag. But then, yeah, during actually at the camps, we were like really taken care of. There was a lot of food, and we had a
Okay.
lot of time to rest also. So yeah, that was
Okay, that's
nice.
good. And how did you prepare for this race? I mean, I imagine you needed some acclimatization for that. You mentioned that you had already 1 week for that, but did you have something before?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
some
it
time for
was
that?
a very, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I try to prepare by, I spent my whole summer actually doing field work and also some mountaineering in Pakistan. So actually, I didn't run so much, but I did climb some mountains. But then when I was back in Norway, I lost all my acclimatization because I had to teach at university and I had to, yeah, a lot of work to do. So I couldn't go anywhere high because in Norway, the highest point of the country is 2,400 meters, which is basically about the height of the capital of Bhutan. So it's not very high. And so I basically didn't really acclimatize. I went skiing a bit higher once, but that's all. And I just went there hoping I would manage with this week. But it's true that lots of the other runners, I mean, the Bhutanese obviously were acclimatized, and the other runners, most of them try to acclimatize either in their local mountains or with an altitude tent. And except I think my friend Arafat from Bangladesh, he came from sea level, so it was pretty tough for him too. And he had just done, I think, an Ironman before as well. So yeah, we but then I somehow was lucky. I managed to acclimatize quite well there, although I had a cold also when going there. That was a bit scary because if you're sick at altitude, it's not good for your climate. Like it slows you down a lot. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, that's super interesting, definitely. I just have like a last question about the invitation of the king. You mentioned
Mhm.
that it was for sure not very easy to find some athletes going there. It was a big thing. I'm just curious about like how were you chosen, or just received an email, or how was that? You received a
Yeah,
call.
I mean, actually, it was the race organizers who invited, and I think they just asked around a bit, and we got an email exactly with an official invitation. So basically, they usually consulted all the committee, I think, internally of the race organizers and the locals, and then they had to agree, and then they sent invitation to a runner, I think. Yeah,
Hmm. I think it
but
definitely,
it
yeah,
was like
makes
already in
sense that you were
spring.
there.
Yeah, probably, maybe. Yeah.
No, I think for sure, because of that combination that you have, and we have spoken in another podcast episodes about the glaciers, why they're so important. Bhutan has also an important amount of glaciers, like around 700, so more or less a half of what Switzerland has. So I want to ask you, according to what you saw as a glaciologist, what was your vision there? What did you see, also in comparison to what have you seen in other places of the world?
Very good question. So it's a very, I mean, I must say, I have never been in a place like Bhutan because it's a very remote and beautiful and pristine region. So there's not so much tourism and there's not much infrastructure at all in the mountains. Like many villages, you can only reach them on foot or on a really difficult road. So already that is quite impressive. And the glaciers are quite high up in general. I would say. I mean, here this picture. I was at the first day at the pass at around 5,200 meters, I think, or 5,100, and there's this very steep glacier hanging there. So I would say some glaciers actually reminded me a bit of the Alps, but what is very different from the Alps, but it's similar to some other parts of the Himalayas, that they have debris cover. So they have the lower part of the glacier is covered by rocks, some of them, and that insulates them from melting and protects them a bit, so it can slow down melt for some of the tongues, but many of them, as I looked at some publications before going there, because you cannot see it just like that, but they have been retreating quite rapidly between, around 50 meters in length a year, some of them. Also, a lot of volume loss. Um, and then what is very special in Bhutan is that these glacier lake outburst floods can happen, like in other places of the Himalayas, but in Bhutan they have had some pretty terrible ones. And these are the proglacial lakes that are dammed by moraines. They are quite visible all the time, actually, during the race, in several places.
Can you explain a little bit more that concept for the one who doesn't know? I think that's very important because I guess that is the main risk in that area, the glacial lake outbursts
Yes,
floods.
it can be. Yeah, so um, you can have different types of glacial lakes. Either they are on the surface of the glacier or underneath the ice, even, or they are dammed by the glacier itself, by the ice, or they are in front of the glacier and dammed by a moraine or bedrock. And these usually in the Bhutanese, but also Indian Himalayas, they're often dammed by a moraine. And the glacial moraine, it's like a wall of rock debris that was deposited by the glacier sometimes a long time ago. And so that's not very stable. And often these moraines, they have a core that is frozen. It's like a wall that it's like a pile of rocks, but it's partly frozen inside. So the problem is if the temperature, the mean annual temperature goes up, the core of the moraine can start getting weaker and because of melt. And therefore, sometimes it can burst. There's also other reasons why it can burst, like earthquakes. There can also be like avalanches into the glacial lake. Like here we see there's steep rock. If like there's a rock avalanche or a piece of the glacier that breaks off, or some other sort of landslide into the lake, there can be huge outburst floods as well. And then, yeah, this is much bigger than a regular hydrological flood because it's like an entire lake emptying in just maybe 2 hours, and it goes downstream very fast. So this is a very destructive flood that usually takes away bridges and floods entire villages and so on. So that is quite dangerous. But the other thing, obviously, is also that the impact of glacier melt on the water availability during the dry season in Bhutan. So there's simply during dry periods, there's then less water because the glacier is smaller, and then there's less melt water available. And when the glacier is completely gone, maybe at the end of the century, there's even less. Yeah. So.
Yeah, so practically those are the main problems which are bad enough, which are those risks because of the lake outburst floods, the water scarcity, and the landslides impacts because of intense precipitation. Those events, I want to ask you, I mean, as you know, for example, in some places, those kind of areas are better monitored than in other areas. And then you have time to react to those events. For example, what happened last week in Switzerland, then a town could be evacuated before something bad happened. How is the monitoring in Bhutan? Because we had experience, for example, for the tropical glaciers that for in some remote areas, the monitoring is not that good. But for some of them, yes, it has improved. But I want to hear from you. What did you see there?
Yes, I will just try to share maybe one presentation by a Bhutanese glaciologist, if I can. Let's see. So basically, actually, I was surprised because the great thing during this race was we had a presentation by a glaciologist from Bhutan, and he showed us their monitoring efforts, and they are actually quite prepared. Like they know most of the glacial lakes. They know which glacial lakes have a high danger potential, and so they monitor. They have like discharge measurements. They have monitoring systems, so they have early warning. And usually at the most dangerous spots, they are even active 24/7. Someone is there and could warn the locals. But of course, yeah, it's not always easy to respond, even if you warn. You also need to efficiently like evacuate and so on. And they also do investigate, like they conduct science. So they investigate moraine stability. They have monitored glaciers. So they measure their ablation, how fast the glacier melts, the mass balance. And yeah, but of course, it's only a small fractions of all the glaciers that they can monitor. I'm just trying to show one of the glaciers. Yeah, maybe back to this one. And but to me it was impressive because this country, it's like very traditional in a way, and also, let's say, I think deliberately they like to live close to nature as well. But then and they're very smart. They have like when it's needed, they are quite good with technology and to use it. So yeah, that's pretty. To me, it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I didn't expect that as well. But for example, I mean, I'm just curious about. I mean, in the case of, I don't know if you have seen that there, but in the case of an evacuation, for example, I mean, such villages. I mean, those are very remote areas.
Mhm.
How can they do that? I mean, is that really easy, or what is the transport there?
Yes, maybe you can see this screen. Yes.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so it's not always easy. Yeah, it's good to say that, because as I said, in some places people just live. You have to go on foot, and
Mhm.
some roads are really difficult by car. So yeah, it's a lot of local knowledge. Usually people know what to do, but the problem is there's also new dangers emerging. So this is a slide from Karma Töb, a glaciologist from Bhutan, and there's lots of glacial lakes, but they're really so about 570, but the really dangerous ones are not so many. So there's new dangers. I saw recent publications, and also I know from the population, for example, landslides, due to increasing extreme precipitation, they have been increasing, and these are very hard to predict where and when they happen, especially when they happen. So yeah, there's still huge challenges. Here is some slides from monitoring activities that I talked about before, stability of moraines and so on. Uh, they monitor these moraines now quite regularly, as I understand, because here in this valley, for example, actually it's part we ran not so far from there. There's a double, like there's two glacial lakes behind each other, and they could trigger. If they trigger both, it's like really bad. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Regarding the landslides,
Mhm.
is in general difficult to predict when is that happening, or it's because of the region and the location, or is that in general difficult to predict?
Yeah, landslide by definition anywhere is difficult. Yeah, it's
Okay.
like yes. I mean, you can say when is it prone because of precipitation or so, but even in Norway or in Switzerland, it's quite difficult. Yeah, yeah, it's yeah.
Glaciers. Okay, definitely very interesting. Pascal, you want to share with us before we go to the next question about a more general part? Do you want to share with us maybe something else about the race? For example, the distances, the food, the conditions in which you slept. How were your colleagues? Was it a good group? Well, maybe some of them are here, so I guess you can only say good things about that.
Yeah, the race was a really intense and very special experience because yeah, it's quite. I mean, you're in a place where you're quite vulnerable. I mean, we have never been there, and it's at high altitude. As you see here, it's quite cold at night. Like here, we are in the food tent. I think the first night maybe, getting food, and we only actually had a very small clothes bag that we could drop at every point if we wanted, but we were like, because it's such a long way, we would not get back these clothes, so we need to sort out all clothes at home. And so we had actually quite limited like resources available, of course, in these camps, except for the food. And so it is kind of, you're a bit exposed, and whenever you get to the camp, you're just trying to rest as much as possible. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think it was especially great thanks to the people, like because you support each other even if you suffer or someone comes in very late to camp. We were always welcoming the runners when they came, even after 2 or 3 hours later or more. So we went to the finish, because maybe we were taking a nap in the tent or having a snack. But everyone usually went out to welcome them if we saw them. And Yeah, but in general, they were like taking really good care of us in the camp, and also with the Bhutanese runners together, it was nice. They of course know the place and the course much better. um, and yeah, what was maybe, I mean, yeah, many scary things can happen. To be honest, I almost dropped out during stage 3 because I felt like my knee was not so great. I had injured it previously, and I
That was the
also,
hardest one, right?
yeah, that stage 3, it's like you go the highest and you do about 2,500 vertical meters, but also almost 40 kilometers and up to 5,500 meters. And yeah, if you think, okay, it's the middle, so you have to do 2 other days and you're already a bit tired. And I was still recovering from the cold. So I was considering, because it was the last chance to drop out. Afterwards, you just had to finish because it's very long to get out. You have to hike for 5 days basically to get out. And so it's really remote. You cannot, it's only if you're really injured or something really bad happens, they can send a helicopter, maybe if the weather is good. Yeah, but they don't just send a helicopter like that. And yeah, so no, it was quite serious sometimes, and people were really struggling, some to make the cutoff times. But that's why then it also got like, we got really close, like good friends. And I must say, recovery is also something special. I mean, you get up, the highest we slept after day 3 was above 5,000 meters, and you get up in, you go to bed already tired from the race, but you cannot really recover
Mhm.
because you're at 5,000 meters. And then in the morning you get up and you actually already have oxygen depth. That means that your mitochondria, your blood doesn't have enough oxygen saturation. And that some of us felt, like Rosanna from Germany. She's an extremely
Mhm.
strong runner, and she, I mean, she ended up winning the race. But that day, day 4, she started kind of fast. But after less than half an hour, she was starting to hallucinate, and she like seriously hallucinated. Like,
Wow.
she told us stories like, yeah, the earth opened up under me and I saw all the flowers. They looked like GoPros and they looked at me, and like it was really scary. And she didn't know what to
Wow.
do. And she almost stopped, but then she asked another runner what she should do. And he just said, yeah, you should eat and drink a lot and go very slow. And yeah, she was thinking, and then there was also a heli cruising, and she was also having hallucinations about the heli, I think. She was thinking, oh, maybe the heli can pick me up. And yeah, so it was really bad. And honestly, I'm glad
Wow.
everyone is fine because a lot of things can happen. We also got a little bit lost once, not so long, but we were, it was quite safe. I mean, they had our GPS tracker.
Mhm.
Actually, military in a control central, they were always following our GPS trackers.
But how did
And
you follow the path? I mean, how did you know? Because I mean, that's a
yeah, the path
super
was
big
marked,
area.
actually,
Okay.
but
Wow.
we had always had to have the GPS track on the watch for every day,
Mhm.
and we had to, yeah, we also had maps, printed maps. So
Okay.
yeah, but yeah, you also needed to be careful about navigation, not to do a big mistake, because sometimes maybe some flags are missing, or yeah, can happen. But
Yeah.
so yeah, it was like a big event adventure. It was not like really like a race for me. It was, well, in the end, maybe I started running faster in the end because I felt more acclimatized. Yeah.
Um, Pascal, I didn't prepare you for this, but maybe you know that I asked this surprise question. Like, and this is very, it is related to what you're telling to us. What
Mhm.
was the thing that you liked the most? I mean, it could be a special place, situation, best food, whatever. What was the thing that you said? Wow,
Oh,
I mean, that
good
impressed me a
question.
lot, or I liked that a lot.
Yeah, I think it was probably day 3 because I think it was just the mountains that they were insane. Like, because the weather cleared up and the views got really spectacular. And there were some moments where I was like super emotional, and maybe you saw it in the video. But there was one more in the morning of day three. I mean, you always start really early, like at 6 in the morning. It's like 0 degrees, and we started like in shorts. And then there was like an elderly woman offering us tea on the side of, and it was like really cold. And of course, the tea is way too hot to drink, and you try to drink, but yeah, you try also want to run. But that was like super cute that she was there, and yeah, it
And
made me
she's there in
really
the middle of
emotional.
nowhere, waiting for you all.
Yeah, in a very small village, like some settlements with some animals. And yes, and then up the way there, it was also actually quite funny because there were like, for example, there was Claire Gallagher, the American runner from Colorado. She got lost. She got lost several times during the race, and she accidentally cut off the course, and she went through the big
Oh,
river instead of over the bridge. She went like hip deep through the river, and it was really dangerous and really cold. And she was like, "Oh my god!" Like I met her, and like so I was like, "Why are you in front of me? You should be behind me." And she was like, "I don't know. I went through the river," and was like, "Which river?" And so it was just really funny. So that day was just quite funny. And yeah, and then higher up, it was just insane view of really high mountains up to 7,000 meters, and
wow.
also then high up to the pass. I really started enjoying to push. Actually, I felt like my health was improving. So then I started to push more and to catch up, and that was great. That was just a good feelings on that day. Yeah, but
Did you have any hallucination or something like that? Or you felt normal the whole time?
no, I didn't. I was really careful, but yeah, you can definitely have that. If you're not careful. I think Rosada, it was also because she really pushed hard. She wanted to win.
Okay.
Or she wanted to stay ahead of a Bhutanese runner, and she really, and I didn't push so much. I mean, maybe sometimes, but not most of the time. I didn't try to go to the limit because I was quite careful. Yeah, so
Yeah. Sometimes it's good like that. Well,
yeah.
that's really cool.
Mhm.
Um, Pascal, regarding, well, this is the last question that I have. I would like to encourage the people that are connected. If you want to know something about the race, you can leave us your comments or questions in the chat. I still have a question. And I'm
Mhm.
coming back to the glacier topic. And
Mhm.
I mean, as you know, so officially, this is the year of the glaciers, and the topic is very important. And also
Mhm.
because of the last conference of climate conference and everything. I mean, it has been like a big, yeah, movement around this. What is your perception or experience like from the side of the politics? I mean, I know you work in university, you have seen a lot of situations and glaciers around the world. You were also in Pakistan, I think this year, last year. So, do you see that this name of the year of the glaciers is really bringing something? More awareness, more measurements. I don't know. What is your perception?
Yeah, it's very complex, I must say, and yeah, I think it does have an effect. This year of the glaciers, that's a great idea, and I do think people are actually quite conscious. Most people are aware of the climate change. I'm not sure everyone is aware how grave the situation is, and I think also many people want actually to make an effort to kind of reduce our emissions and kind of improve the climate impacts, but it's not so easy. And I was surprised, like when I was in Pakistan or also now in Bhutan. I mean, people are, first of all, they are really aware of climate change, and second of all, they're also aware that like we need to change something, and they're also aware that actually the biggest culprit historically is, of course, like the Western world, the Northern Hemisphere especially, and the big industry nations. And that, but the South, global South, they are really suffering most consequences from it, or they are going there already. I mean, I know from in the South, there's many countries now, they have heat waves with above 50 degrees Celsius, and that's, you cannot live in these conditions. It's just impossible. um, but yeah, at the same time, now new studies coming out, they just show how actually every tenth of a degree makes a big difference, and how the whole system is more sensitive than we even thought, and that we are going towards a point of maybe no return, because there's so many feedback mechanisms, right? Like, for example,
Mhm.
if there's much less snow and ice on Earth. There's less reflection of the sunlight, so the whole system is warming up even more. But then also the big ice sheets, if they melt to a certain degree, they won't just grow again, because they lower
Yeah.
their altitude, and they will stay warmer. And it's impossible to regenerate them under this climate for sure. Um, and then, yeah, I mean, I see that many people are prepared to make efforts, but I also see that, for example, the European Union, they have quite a big program. I see also that some nations in the global South that are not so known in Europe, maybe they actually have some quite big willpower and initiatives, like deployment of solar power and so on, to change something, but that's not often seen. And also, it's a question of financing. So I have the impression that especially big corporations and those with the big money and big governments, they need to step up and invest much more into solutions for renewable energy production, but also reduction of emissions. Yeah, not just in energy. And but we are currently, I mean, we're not on track, obviously. So
Mhm.
yeah, and that was very, I mean, that was very impressive to see in Bhutan how aware the people are of this, and how connected to nature they are. They like really, I mean, for example, they still have around, I think, 70% of the surface of their country is just forest, and they have this big commitment of conserving, I think, at least 60% just forests. Yeah. So their attitude is different, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and they are definitely directly affected by the climate change. Also, they're directly impacted on their economic activities. So when you're like kind of not touched, then you cannot see that. I imagine that for some of the runners,
Mhm.
some of them were super aware as well, because they know how does it feel like, or they live in such like nature places and are affected by that. But
Mhm.
also some other runners in the group, maybe you had experienced that they were like,
Mhm.
okay, interesting. Was that the case in the group?
You mean runners from Bhutan or others?
Yeah, the runners that were with you in the group in the race, like some of
Yes.
them also very aware, and some of them like, oh yeah, true, good to
Um,
know.
yeah, you mean like the international or the Bhutanese runners or all?
The international, I imagine, right?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, I would say that all of the runners who came there, they were um, they came also due to this mission, and they were interested in the topic and aware of the topic already. Yes, and definitely. I mean, all of them. I mean, for example, Arafat is from Bangladesh. I mean, this country, so much of the country is at sea level, or some of it, I think, even below, and it's like a huge threat from climate change. His mother country, and so yes, everyone was. And what can I say? I would say everyone had also a big commitment and to bring out this message. That's why all of us are now also giving this like podcast or yeah, streamings or chats, also like presentations in real life about this. And that was also the goal of the race, yes. But we also all felt, actually discussed several times even during the race, like felt this like but of course we also want to reduce our impact ourselves. And I mean, traveling so far, it's not ideal, so it feels like it's not easy to stick to your principles. But what I know is, when I read about this topic and talk to experts, it's like, although we have a certain environmental impact traveling there, I would say our impact that we have by talking about the problem and bringing the message from Bhutan to the world, it's probably the positive impact it has. It overweighs probably the maybe the negative impact that we have with our travel, or hopefully at least. But that's what the data says. And because it, like, we all in our bubble, we think that everyone is aware of the problem and everyone is doing something. But if we go outside of that bubble, maybe it's actually not as many as we think. So yeah, it's always good to try and reach more people.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that at the end, that's the paradox that I think all of us, we have an impact and we try to adapt our behaviors. And sometimes you just need to fly somewhere because, yeah, of any reason, or you just need to consume. I mean, you just need to eat or
Yeah.
transport from one place to another. But at the end, I think the most important thing is to be aware and conscious of the impact, and then you can decide in like your daily life. I mean, you're more conscious of your actions and decisions. I think that's the most important thing at the end, because you will always have an impact. So it's also really nice what are you doing, but I understand the paradox here and the ethical problems.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. You want to tell us something else about the race? Did we forget something?
Yeah, I mean, what is maybe important to say about this experience? It's hard to tell everything in images or in tales like now, because it's so many experiences. Like, I can show some pictures. This was the last camp before we came down. So it was a lot of experience also around the race, not just the race itself. That's when we welcome Arafat, because he comes in as a last, but he's finishing, although he had a big pain in his leg, finishing in Bhutan, the last stage. What I want to say is that, like, the program around the race, so not just the race itself, like the days before and after, it was also quite packed and we learned a lot. So it was quite a big part of the experience. Um, so here I had the honor to be greeted at the finish line by the Prime Minister of Bhutan, and we had met him also before, so of course we recognized him. Um, and yeah, so this whole, it was like much more than a race. It was a huge experience. He was one of the Bhutanese runner I ran with for some time. And yeah, really one of the best experiences was probably also sharing the trail with other people high up in the mountains. So
Mhm.
always, yeah, encouraging each other and helping. Yeah, I think that's an important part. Yeah, what else can I say? I would say that it's very encouraging for me, and maybe I can tell that to others, because I went into this race being quite scared, because you need to see that, okay, I'm working full time here in Trondheim at the university, and I'm living at almost at sea level. I don't have very big mountains close to home to train. I have to drive at least more than 2 hours for a bigger mountain. And most of the athletes coming in, and also the Bhutanese athletes, they actually live in the mountains higher up, and they are, some of them, they are even pro athletes. So I was like, wow, how am I going to manage? Because on top of that, I had some problems with my knee that is a bit injured and was a bit injured. And yeah, some other problems with the altitude, and I was like, how am I even going to finish it without like getting really in trouble or getting more injured? And so I was really uncertain. And also the whole thing, like, I had to take holidays of course. And also, I took some of my work time where I had worked more than 100% to compensate. And so I was also unsure when I come back if I would have a lot of stress actually at work because I have to catch up with so many things. Like I'm teaching a course, students are waiting for me. But of course, that's why sometimes in Bhutan, I was also working late at night, even in the little village, remote village in the mountains. I was using a hotspot and working. But or in the hotel down in town, and because you cannot catch up after 2 weeks leaving the university because there's like reports to look at or exams like yeah, something to grade or feedback for students or so. And it's very important to not leave my students alone. But so it was quite positive. I mean, of course, it maybe lacked some sleep sometimes, but during the
Sometimes.
race, the best was, I mean, we could sleep a lot. We were without network, out in the Himalayas, and I want to spend more time every year like that because it's just the best time of your life when you're in the mountains without network. I mean, there's nothing better than that, right? So
That's
yeah,
true.
that's where we run away.
That's a good motivation. Actually, I thought that you were just checking reports at 5,000 meters altitude, but now that you mentioned that you were completely disconnected,
No,
I
because,
understand.
yeah,
Okay, so the
that
invitation
was
is to
special about the
disconnect.
race. Yes, and that was special about the race. Yeah, there's no network at all for these 5 days. In one day, I think there was a little bit, but for 1 hour or so. But usually there was not, and that's yeah, we were just on our own.
That's
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah, I think I will take seriously that encouragement. That's a good idea.
And I think we learned a lot. The thing is also in such an experience, it's hard to transmit everything via words because you learn a lot of things from people there, and from the nature, not only by what people say or about what you read or so, but sometimes it's just by experiencing or by being there.
Mhm,
And you cannot
mhm.
transmit everything. It's about like a way of living or a way of seeing planet Earth, and it's hard to like. You can try to explain it, but some of it you have to experience yourself as well, and that's kind of the secret, maybe.
Pascal, do you
Yeah.
think that, I mean, do they want in Bhutan to encourage the tourism as well? I mean, or do they want to get more
Tourism.
tourists, or is not like that? You mentioned that there is not a lot of infrastructure, but maybe
To
that
a
could be
certain
an invitation.
extent, I mean, some to, but they don't. They want to limit tourism. I mean, they want, of course, they partly some people live off tourism, but they don't want too much because they know it has a big impact on their environment and on people's lives. So they want tourism, but they are quite smart about it. I mean, they limit it and they make people pay for being there like a tax, and that's, I think that's fine because if you can afford to travel there, to pay a plane ticket to go there, and you can afford to take time to go there and everything, then you can also pay the travel tax. And of course it's quite expensive, but I think it's to protect their environment because there would be way more people coming. I mean, in Nepal, you see there's so many people going there to go trekking or so, and sometimes the mountain environment also suffers from over
Yeah.
tourism, as you can see now on the high mountains in Himalayas.
Mhm. Okay, great. So the idea is to experience that. Well, maybe in Bhutan or in other places, to be offline, to be aware of our behaviors. That's the most important part, to be informed about what is happening also around,
Yeah, maybe.
um, to do some sports. And if Pascal can do that by teaching and being a professional athlete, then I guess we can all have time for a little bit of that. So thanks for the motivation.
Yeah, welcome. Sorry, there's some. Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, and I'm happy to also answer questions or later on if people they can write. Um, Yeah, but thanks for for inviting me and for your curiosity. Um,
Yeah, of course. I mean, I saw or we saw that this race or after this race idea will be that the athletes become climate ambassadors. So that's a very good opportunity to hear from you what you learned, what you saw, and this is definitely super motivational and inspiring. So thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing your message also around the world. Thanks for what you do. And I don't see any questions in the chat. Um, but yeah, I appreciate very much. So your knowledge that you were here and also the people who were connected. Thank you very much. This episode can be also found in the next days, also in the podcast platforms. And yeah, happy to have you in other episodes, Pascal.
Thank you, Juliana. Yeah, was fun to chat.
And wish you a good evening, and also to the people connected, wish you a good day, depending on where you are, and a good evening for the ones in Europe. And bye bye. See you next time.
You too. Bye bye. Have a good evening.